Saturday, 13th of May, 1893. 8 o'clock. It was a lovely grey and foggy day this afternoon, so I decided to take the chance to get out and spread my legs by taking a stroll. Not many people tend to wander too much in such weather, and if they were to see me in the distance, well, they would keep theirs. On my stroll, however, I saw Miss Dunkelheit somberly wandering town all by herself with a bouquet of flowers. She looked as though she was a mourner, wearing nearly all black and with a pained expression on her face. Though, after seeing her wander into a cemetery, this did seem to be an accurate choice of words. I know that it was not really a dangerous thing for someone like me to walk around in such conditions, as most people would assume me a perpetrator, but for a young lady like herself, it felt like a dangerous tempting of fate. And then, there was how she had such a distraught look on her face. It made me feel so disheartened to see her in such a way. So, partially against my better judgment, I followed after her, as to keep a watchful, guardian eye. I took a good look at the flowers arranged in her bouquet, since their colours seemed to bring me a slight confusion. Narcissus, pink carnations, pink camellia, azalea, and dark crimson roses. Aside from the narcissus, the collection consisted of mainly shades of pink. Though, from the knowledge that I have on their meanings, aside from the narcissus, once again, they all seem to be very appropriate for someone in mourning. To a certain extent, I was feeling glad that I decided to keep an eye on Miss Dunkelheit, because she really was seeming to be out of sorts. She wasn't paying attention to her surroundings, and hardly seemed to notice my presence lurking close behind. As she approached a grave that seemed to be her destination, the young Venus stopped and knelt in her place. I peeked a little over her shoulder to see the name, Heidi Dunkelheit, written across the stone slate. She proceeded to delicately remove one of her gloves, biting onto the loose fabric around her fingertip as she pulled with her teeth. She stroked the monument, and I heard a soft,
"Someone else has cleaned you once again."
Her hand traced down to a smaller bouquet that had already been placed, which simply consisted of striped carnations and purple hyacinths. This Heidi must have been truly and dearly missed by someone.
"I am aware that you were there."
Her tone was firm, and this time at an audible level. My eyes found them on the woman once again, though she was still keeping her gaze on what was in front of her. I responded, "Look, I'm terribly sorry for my intrusion. It is I, Mordecai Blackwood, your tutor."
"Hello, Blackwood."
She sounded distant this time, unmoved and unfeeling. I had not meant to disturb such a moment, for you.
"Have you someone to visit here as well?
Miss Dunkelheit inquired as she stood from the grave.
Or is it that you just like to hang around in graveyards or other eerie places? I would not be terribly surprised if you had an obsession with death, seeing your skull brooch, but I'd be surprised to find you rude enough to disrespect the dead. So are you here for someone you love, or do you have other reasons?"
She had her body turned so that I could see the right side of her, but she did not make eye contact. Her eyes remained looking at the floor. I was silent at first, and then answered, "My mother's grave is far from here, up out in northern England, where I once lived with my father. Though, I suppose I find myself out here every once in a while to pay respects, since I am far from anything that resembled her, besides a few musical halls. But I found myself drawn here because I saw you enter, Miss Dunkelheit. I thought it not safe for you to wander on your own on such a grey day."
"Do you wish to escort me home?"
"If that is all right with you."
It's...
She suddenly paused. Hesitation pasted to her lips, until finally she continued,
"a birthday."
"It's a gloomy place to have one, but celebrating life in a place of death, well, is rather unique."
"One should not be alone for a celebration."
"Shall I make sure that you're not alone?" Miss Dunkelheit still had not looked at me, but a soft smile crept onto her face. She finally looked me in the eyes and glided into my direction.
"I suppose."
She linked her arm around mine.
"If you are escorting me home, you either need to make sure I get home safe, else my Vater will have your head if he found out I was with you at this time of endangerment."
"Then you shall return home, just the way you left it."
"Shall we, then?"
On our walk to her estate, Miss Dunkelheit confided in me how she would often take a carriage when making this trek. However, The weather the way it was would often put her mood out of sorts, more so than usual. It stirred up memories, she said. I commented on how if she was feeling off, would it not make more sense for her to instead take a carriage, for safety reasons? But she simply replied with how much she wanted absolutely nothing to do with anyone in her ill mood, not even to order the driver to take her to and from her destination. She then added that walking the trek was all too familiar, though the destination was different. She wanted to remember this time, wanted to commit it to memory the path to her location. She didn't want to fail once again. I didn't understand what she meant by her words, but I knew that she had a stake in her heart from what they were about. At some point, we were almost buggered by some passing thugs, throwing slander at me for the way I was dressed, and making words of advancement toward my travelling companion. When we were in closer view, however, they did back down. I am, after all, an intimidating figure, not just from dress alone. In fact, I was practically a foot taller than Miss Dunkelheit alone. She hardly seemed to mind, anyhow. I walked her to the grounds of a grand mansion, and just a ways off from London. We stopped at a small distance before she wished me well, and continued up on her own. In the entrance, I watched a finely dressed man, donning grey colours, exit the estate and greet Miss Dunkelheit. I could not see too many details, aside that he was tall. Taller than me, in fact. And how he had very mutely coloured blonde locks. Before re-entering, the young woman turned her attentions back towards me, and waved her handkerchief. The man's gaze set upon me as though a wild animal feeling their territory being encroached. However, his mood seemed to change ever so slightly, as he waved me off as well. I gave a courteous bow, and made my own way back home. I wonder what burdens Charlotte Dunkelheit so deeply. But I feel wrong in my curiosity, for I will not allow her to say her own about me. Does that make me terrible and cruel? Or is that only human nature? I received her letter, and could feel how little I knew about this woman start clawing at my skull. Her words are almost haunting, putting my title as the Phantom to shame. All the same, I feel the desire to protect her. Nothing more or less, at the moment. I hope that she does not find me to be intrusive in any capacity. We shall keep to ourselves of our own pain, for now.